Hi, welcome. It's been a couple of days since I recorded a video. Somehow it didn't fit into my daily planning, and yesterday this topic I'm going to share about today, the cognitive dissonance as well as the rationalization pattern we are all having, is one that came up very strongly and has come up very strongly in these past months towards what's happening in the world. Feeling it so clearly and so profoundly, how that shows up in every little moment even. So let me start with a little beginning. Since we are born, and from the moment we feel that we are a separated being from our mother, or our loved ones who take care of us in that moment, since the moment that we start to individualize ourselves, in a sense, be aware that we are a being, we also develop the instinct that we want to feel safe. So this is probably most likely our survival instinct that has been inherited from our ancestors for eons, and it's very deep in our DNA. And this survival instinct has a few aspects, but one of it is feeling safe and make sure to be safe. So as a young child, we develop mechanisms and drives and patterns that is related to the actions we take, and then we see the reaction from our loved ones, or the ones that we want to feel safe with. And depending on how that reaction is, we develop a certain pattern. And that can show up in many different ways. And I don't want to go into these patterns right now, but this neediness to feel safe is in there practically all our lives. And it makes sense, right? Because we wanna live life, so it helps to feel safe and not to be too fearlessness, because then we might endanger ourselves and die too young. So it makes sense to feel safe, but we also want to feel emotionally safe. And emotionally safe is also kind of linked to feeling loved and belonging somewhere. And again, that's already starting at a very young age and actually never leaves our system. That we are very dependent on how the world outside of ourselves reacts to us. And there we define whether we feel safe or not. And most often it's a false safety. We have created in a belief within ourselves that this behavior creates safety and another behavior feels unsafe or uncomfortable, or any variation of that. Might be fearful to just uncomfortable, but certain behaviors we just avoid to have to do because the reaction feels very uncomfortable that we get from the outer world. And because we believe it so strongly, we keep repeating that same behavior because it feels safe, right? So we stay in that bubble. And that goes to a very wide extent of beliefs that we build in our lives, that we learned from our teachers, that we learned from our parents, that we learned from our friends, that we learned from our societies, that we learned from online social media. There's so many, and from our political systems, of course. There's so many beliefs that we all integrate in as what feels true to us. But the truth is not so much important, it feels safe to us. So in order to avoid feeling unsafe, we have created a lot of defense mechanisms that are the patterns I referred to earlier. Not everything is a defense mechanism, but you can just relate to it as a defense mechanism because you avoid feeling unsafe by defending yourself in a certain way, with a certain reaction, with a certain behavior, or with shutting down and not willing to hear something new that's provocative to you. So this rationalization of this idea life is good enough, it's okay, it's perfect, it's great, just telling ourselves stories that life is good enough is often where we don't see actually that we're actually ignoring ourselves, that there's a lot more to life than we're getting out of it today. We know that, we unconsciously know that. We know that we don't live up to our potential. And most of us don't live up to our potential. And because of our systems, we are not even invited to live up to our potential. So it's quite a struggle, actually. We want to feel safe. We want to unconsciously get the max out of life. Everyone has that drive. Wherever you are, we all have this instinct to survive, but also to create something which makes us happy, to make sure that we live a happy life. That's a very strong driver within us, and it makes sense because we all deserve to live happy and free. And at the same time, we avoid feeling unsafe. So this paradox kind of keeps us stuck. And our defense mechanism, and rationalizing is one of them, where we just tend to step over things by just pushing them away. We feel it coming up, and then we just no, we don't want to feel that, so we push that away, and we stay in our comfortable bubble, which feels safe to us. But with the current events, and with a lot of information that triggers our fears, or triggers frustration, or triggers anger, or triggers insecurity, and even unsure future, with all these events that are happening right now, we are even more challenged about our safety and feeling of safety. So when there is information coming up, you can clearly see that another way of rationalizing ourselves, we use this other defense mechanism, which is cognitive dissonance. And as the word is already, or the expression is already saying, with our thinking, we distance ourselves from what the information we hear. And we make that decision very unconsciously almost, or very instantly, that when we hear something that feels threatening to us, that does not confirm our safe bubble, we distance ourselves from it. And then we use an excuse to say, like, no, that's not true, that's weird, that's totally nonsense, or whatever it is. And we're not even able to look objectively at the information anymore, because we take it personal. Because something in us got triggered and makes us feel uncomfortable. That new piece of information, which was new to us because it did not confirm our safe bubble. It did not confirm that the person, for instance, we trust is creating a safe space for us. We actually feel that the truth might be different, or there might be a different perspective to the situation. And then we feel unsafe and insecure, and we don't want that. So we push it away and we say, like, no, that's not true, that's weird, that's nonsense, that's not something I want to dive into. So then we retreat back into our safe bubble and only consume the information that feels safe. Even if that information doesn't make us feel safe at all from an outer perspective, even if that information keeps us in fear, or even if that information approves of measures that we normally would not approve of, the fact that we feel unsafe is more important than thinking of the consequences of that ignorance, actually, of that dissonance, of the fact that we distance ourselves. So we are finding us in extreme challenging times, and at the same time fascinating times, because it creates enormous opportunity to open ourselves up to more perspectives right now. There's so much information out there, and opening up to it from a stance that you don't know the truth. No one knows the truth right now. Not even the experts agree on anything. Not even the politicians agree upon anything. Not even the news agrees upon anything. I mean, there is no truth to be found. I mean, it hasn't been so clear right now as it has been before. It's never been so clear, that there is no absolute truth. So we are invited to find our own way through all this information. And even by ignoring all the information and just keeping your world very small, you're still making a choice to do that. And you know deep down inside that it might have consequences for you, that you might oversee and overstep things that you know unconsciously deep down inside that might actually harm you in the future. But nevertheless, it feels safer to feel safe right now. And it's a false safety in my very blunt expression and conclusion, because keeping yourself small is always coming from a false safety, because we are not small beings. We have so much potential, we have so much to give to ourselves and to this world, and we have all a good intention. We might have been traumatized and have been hurt so much that it's hard to connect to that good intention, but inherently it's there. So the challenge we find ourselves in is opening up to more than one stream of information and just staying with it, and just allowing all these emotions coming up, or allowing all these senses coming up of contraction, resistance, frustration, anger, whatever comes up, fear. It can come up in many different ways, depending, of course, what you read and what's so challenging to you, or what you see and what's so challenging to you. And then just sit with that emotion without acting upon it, like without rationalizing it away, but just sensing it, like, what does it tell me? Because looking inside and finding your own truth in that moment is the best thing you can do, and is actually the only thing you can do. If there is no absolute truth, the only thing we can live with, and we can live a really good life with, we can even live a thriving life with, is knowing what's true to yourself. And that truth evolves in time, in the sense like you get more information, you get more knowing about your own alignment, you get more knowing about what's true to you, what feels in alignment with you. And you have to learn that, you have to practice with that. Because we have, for many years, depending how old you are, but for some many decennia, you have believed certain things to be true, and discovering that that might not be so true or so trustworthy is painful. It's just painful, because if something is not true, you found out that something is not true, what you led to believe for many years, that it was a truth, that it was like that it is like this, and suddenly you find out it's not so true. That's just painful, because what does it tell you about other things you believe to be true? So you have this feeling of inner, almost guilt, or like this feeling of I've been tricked into something, or this feeling of I have not been good enough because they have taken me on a path which apparently is not true, is very, it's very disheartening at first. But ultimately it's so liberating. So the first steps might be difficult, but once you understand that it's only a lesson or a way to learn what's true to you and what feels in alignment to you, and you have to be very honest with that, because you trick yourself easily out of it and go back into rationalizing, like, no, that's nothing for me. Or the real cognitive dissonance, no, this is not true and this is false, and that's more strong. And more aggressive, you're in that way more aggressive when you push something away. But learning to become very self-honest with yourself and accept that, well, this might be a perspective to something. Let me just dive into this. Let me explore. Let me find out more. And then you don't even have to share it with someone, but just share it with yourself, because you can sense what it does with you. And find out if there is more to life than your current reality tells you. If there's more to life than your current newspaper tells you. If there's more to life than your current friends tell you. And I had a great advice many years ago of someone who said, if you really want to learn how to be very self-honest and how to grow in finding your own truth, you have to listen to a lot of opposing opinions. You have to listen more to opposing and opinions coming from a total different perspective, and might be very strange at first to listen to, because that's where you find your own truth, and that's where you widen yourself literally and expand yourself literally, and where it's freeing, because then you can choose where it is that that life gives you something what you can use actually to empower yourself, because that's ultimately what's happening. Because if you open yourself up to your inner alignment and to your inner truth, then you literally empower yourself by knowing that you have the tools within you. It's all inside of you. You have the tools within you to feel this and be this empowerment. No one outside you can give you that. You can read as many things as you like, and you have to read it in order to get this information and play with it. But the ultimate empowerment is within yourself. And that's something you have to sense. That's something you have to align with. And that's actually what all my teachings here are about. Is finding this inner alignment and this inner empowerment. And that is what makes you thriving. And that's what gives you the tools and the strength and the power to create life for you. That it doesn't happen to you, but create life for you. And that you're not dependent on what other people tell you or let you believe to be true or be good or bad, but that you have that all in your own hand. And it's not the same as there's a little trap, and what I really experienced over these past months, you can easily get tricked. Even if you're very open-minded, you can still easily get tricked into following like this tunnel vision of one storyline that feels very safe again. So I would almost say, as soon as something feels too safe, then you kind of should ask yourself the question like, I should widen my perspective again. I should again listen to another side of the story and feel into it again. What's happening here? And this tunnel vision is easily created because it's the same defense mechanism to feel safe. It all comes down to feeling safe. So ultimate liberation and feeling of freedom is that you don't need to feel safe. That you're so fearless that you don't have any fear at all. And that life is just happening and is a play, and that you can, I would almost say, cherry pick in life and create what is in alignment with you. That's pure liberation. And that feeling is not even it's hard to explain in words. It's like this overwhelming feeling. I think I shared it in other videos and probably will keep sharing it. And when I see it happening when I work with clients one-on-one, it's just, you can see that moment happening where this sense of liberation just suddenly sinks in. So you have to experience it. You have to feel it. But the practice of opening up to all perspectives is a great one, and I would say a very important one to do. So step out the comfort zone and explore new insights, explore new visions, explore new ideas, explore new perspectives on any topic. It doesn't have to be about what's happening right now in the world. It doesn't have to be about racism, of the virus, or the political systems. It can be anything. It can also be in your own job, or how you relate to your friends. It can be on anything. But exploring these things is really what makes you grow and expand yourself in feeling this freedom, like I can just take in any information and I'm not personally triggered by it. That's liberation. That's purely liberation, because then you can conquer any situation. Then you can be yourself in any situation. And being yourself is the same as being in alignment, and is feeling pure empowerment and being very authentic in your expression, and be very soft and compassionate towards others, because it's not about you, your identified self anymore. It's just being completely even free from the attachment to your identity. So see if you can work with this exploration, and it really is the perfect timing to do now, because there's so much information out there that is triggering, and that is inviting you to explore, and that is inviting you to open up to things that you might find really frightening. And it is frightening. I mean, I've had it many times, that it just feels so uncomfortable, and that you really feel very overwhelmed with information that you cannot hear. And it really feels so frightening that it's literally giving this intense fear, like a threat is happening. Even just by reading information, it can feel that a real threat is happening. It's amazing how influenced our mind is. So we take information and then we instantly have a translation, we give meaning to that information, and then we conclude whether it's fearful or not. And there's nothing happening in the moment itself. It's just taking this information in. And then going through this process of just letting go of this fear again, and then just try to become more objective towards this information, is where you can take a little bit the distance, becoming the observant again, and then just contemplate and think about what this information actually tells you, and try to sense how true it feels to you, and especially try to ask yourself, where don't I want to believe it to be true, and why is that? Is that honest, or is it again pushing it away because I find it difficult to believe that to be true? And especially if it's a bad news, you don't want to believe it to be true. But sometimes bad news is the current reality and the current truth. And then if we know that, then we can define our next step and get more information and define for ourselves where it is that we want to live our lives, and how we want to live our lives, and how we want to get more out of our lives and become less dependent on our outer world. So I feel I'm repeating myself right now. So I'm going to leave it with this, and leave any questions below if you like. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.